You don't need me to tell you that most of the books in airport bookshops on leadership are instantly forgettable. But why are they so bad? Professor David Sims of Cass Business School has a new theory, and it's an interesting theory that conjures up a wonderful mental picture. He says it's like a drunk looking for his keys under a lamppost. I asked him why.
Well, I'm referring back to the old story about the drunk who'd lost his keys, and his friend comes along and says, so you're looking for your keys? The drunk says, yes. And the friend says, did you drop them here under this lamppost? And the drunk says, no, I dropped them over there. So why are you looking here? Well, because the light's better here. So what I'm saying to you is that I think that an awful lot of the leadership research goes on looking under the same lamppost because there's a lot of other people who've looked there, and we've got a sort of research tradition which actually looks in the same places again and again to try and understand leadership. It hasn't worked. We haven't really found out anything by doing that of much significance. It's time we actually moved the lamppost and looked at some of the other areas which might be important for understanding leadership, which might give us a better clue.
And when we think of leaders, often the great leaders of history, these are the heroes. You're saying that that's the wrong approach?
Well, I think so, because we look at the heroes, but we don't look at the people around the heroes. And if we looked at the people around them, we might find that they were the really important figures. So go back to Henry V on the field of Agincourt. Suppose he'd actually spoken that speech that Shakespeare gave him in the play. How many people do you think could have heard? Not very many. So the people around the big hero are at least as important. And if we want to understand leadership as how you make something happen which wasn't going to happen otherwise, you need to understand not just one central figure. You need to find all the other figures around them and say, what were those figures contributing? And leadership, I'd say, is the activity of putting together those activities to make something happen. It's not just one person doing something. It never works like that. So in the same sort of way, Warren Bennis talked about visionary leadership. Now, we know what happens to people who have visions. They get psychiatric care. So something else must be involved. There's got to be someone actually to be minding them, to be making sure that they're making sense to other people, to be making sure that their visions don't get too wild, and to making sure that the sums add up when you try and do the accounts. And that's what we need to understand in order to understand leadership.
And when we think of leaders, often we're thinking of the great leaders of history, the heroes. From what you're saying, this is exactly the wrong approach.
Well, yes, I think that one of the strongest central arts of leadership is it's closest to contemplation, because it's to do with understanding yourself and understanding what you're good at and what your own contribution can be and should be, and therefore understanding what other people need to do. And so many people fail to exercise leadership because they want to do it all. They think they're good at everything. They don't realise what it is that they need other people to do for them. And I'd suggest that the people who do best in leadership roles are the ones who know what they're good at, and they build on that strength. And they don't try and stop up all the rat holes of doing all the things they're not good at. Let someone else do that. That's what leadership's really about, is getting other people to do the bits you're not good at.
And then there's the whole art of storytelling.
Yep, I think that leadership is very much about looking at your organisation, deciding where to take its story, because all organisations are stories, so you can see how they're developing, you can see how the story could become something interesting in the future. A leader looks at the organisation and looks to see where could we take this story next, what should be in the next chapter. And then they look to see, so what role am I going to take in that, and what other characters do I want also appear in this story? Let's get other people involved. And a good leader gets other people wanting to be part of that story and wanting to make their own contribution to the story of the organisation.
From what you're saying, this is very much a two-way process.
Absolutely. So the leader, or we call the person the leader, because I've slipped into myself there, haven't I? Because I'm actually saying that there's lots of different leaders here, but someone actually takes the story forward. They can't do it on their own. They can't do it unless other people actually volunteer to join them. So they've got to suggest to other people what it is they might do, what part they might play in this, how they're going to make their own particular contribution. Yes, it's completely two-way. One person cannot do leadership on their own. It doesn't work.
But there are many different types of leader, aren't there? And are you really saying that the hero has been consigned to the dustbin of history?
No. The hero has got a good place so long as the hero doesn't think they're doing it. You know the hero's gone wrong if they're talking about themselves the whole time and talking about what they did. In that case, they're not a hero, they're just a megalomaniac. So someone who's wearing a T-shirt which says leader on it is very rarely actually doing any leadership. They're just swanning around trying to look great. And that's very often done as a substitute for leadership. They may be saying things very definitely, very clearly. They're most likely saying the wrong things very definitely, very clearly. And people like that are actually just plain dangerous, as are people who are extremely charismatic, if that's all they're contributing. Where you need the heroes, there's a lot of bravery involved in leadership. Leadership actually involves taking risks. It involves doing things which weren't going to happen without you doing them. You're never quite sure if it's going to work. So there's a lot of bravery. There's a lot of need for courage. There's a lot of need sometimes for heroic behaviour. But if the hero is all there on their own, then they've got it completely wrong. It simply will not work.
A lot of people will be watching this because they'd like to improve their own leadership skills. If you were to give them one tip, what would it be?
I think the great pointer is, it's going back to what you were saying about the contemplative line. It's to know what you're good at, and it's therefore to know what you need other people to do. So it's really being honest with yourself. Look, I'm very good at getting things organised, but perhaps I'm not very charismatic. Or I'm very good at starting things, but I'm no good at finishing things. It's to be really honest with yourself about what you're good at and what you need other people to do. And then it's being very good at making the right friends, getting the right people around you to do the bits you're not good at. And then the other bit, which quite often comes in, is it's being quite good at the poetry of it. It's being quite good at getting exactly the right word for the situation so that people join in with you, so that people really get the gist of what it is you want. Because if you're going to involve other people in your leadership activity, they've really got to understand the nub of what it is you're trying to do.
Professor David Sims, thank you very much. There's plenty more on the Cass Talks blog. The address, alexritson.com.